The fork clattered onto the porcelain plate the exact moment my phone vibrated. Across the small marble table, tiers of wedding cake samples sat untouched: vanilla almond, red velvet, dark chocolate ganache, each one labeled with our names. I looked up, ready to laugh about my fiancé stepping outside to take a call. But his chair was empty. And then the text came. "I can't do this. I'm leaving. I'll explain later." Later never came. My name is Hina, and 5 minutes before that message, I thought I was about to marry the love of my life. Saad and I had been together for 3 years. He was steady, practical, the kind of man everyone trusted instantly. Our families already spoke as if the wedding had happened. The venue was booked. Invitations were being printed. This cake tasting was supposed to be the easiest, happiest errand of the week. Instead, it became the moment everything cracked. The consultant smiled politely, unaware my world had just tilted. "Shall I bring the next flavor?" she asked. I nodded automatically, fingers numb around my phone. I texted Saad back. "Where did you go? What's wrong? Read." No reply. I stepped outside the bakery, the sweet smell of sugar suddenly suffocating. His car was gone. Not parked down the street. Not waiting around the corner. Gone like he'd planned his escape down to the minute. This wasn't a panic attack. This wasn't cold feet. Saad was a planner. He hated scenes. And yet he'd chosen to disappear in the middle of something symbolic, something public enough to hurt, but quiet enough to avoid confrontation. That realization stung more than the text itself. My hands shook as I scrolled through our last messages. Everything looked normal. "Can't wait to see you. Save me a bite. This is the last step before forever." Forever had just walked out without even looking back. When I finally got home, his engagement jacket was missing. So was his laptop. And the envelope containing some of our joint wedding receipts, things he'd insisted on organizing himself. That night, his mother called. "Hina, beta," she said gently, too gently. "Saad just needs some space. Don't overthink." Space. From a cake tasting? From me? I lay awake replaying the moment again and again, the empty chair, the unread reply, the way his exit felt rehearsed. A thought crept in slowly, unwelcome but sharp: people don't leave like that unless they're running towards something, or away from something they've already destroyed. And deep down, I knew Saad didn't just walk out of a cake tasting. He walked out because he was afraid of what I was about to find out. The morning after Saad vanished from the cake tasting, my phone stayed silent. No apology. No explanation. Just that single text hanging in the air like a bad smell no one wanted to acknowledge. At first, I told myself this was temporary. Stress. Wedding pressure. Everyone gets scared before commitment, right? That's what his mother had implied. That's what my friends gently suggested. But denial doesn't survive details. The first red flag had actually started weeks before, I just hadn't named it yet. Saad began taking calls in the other room. Always short. Always quiet. When I asked who it was, he'd say, "Office stuff," even on Sundays. Once, I walked in unexpectedly and saw him end the call mid-sentence. His smile afterward was forced, like he'd rehearsed it. Another time, he asked me to send him money for a vendor he claimed had changed payment details. I didn't question it, we were partners. Later, when I casually mentioned it to the decorator, she looked confused. "We haven't asked for anything yet," she said. When I confronted Saad, he laughed it off. "Oh, my mistake. I'll sort it out." He never showed me proof. Then there was the favoritism. His family had always been polite, but suddenly, their warmth cooled. His sister stopped replying to my messages. His mother began suggesting changes to my wedding outfit, more subtle, less attention-grabbing. "You don't want to overshadow the family," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Overshadow whom? I also noticed Saad correcting me in front of others, small things. My choice of venue music. My guest list. "Let's keep it simple," he'd say, even though simplicity had never been his concern before. Each incident alone meant nothing. Together, they formed a pattern. The emotional strain crept in quietly. I stopped sleeping properly. I reread old chats, searching for the moment everything shifted. I blamed myself. Maybe I was pushing too hard. Maybe I'd missed a sign. Maybe love really does make people leave without warning. 3 days after the cake tasting, Saad finally texted. "I need more time. Please don't involve anyone. Don't involve anyone." That line unsettled me more than his silence. Why would honesty require secrecy? I went to our shared storage cabinet that evening, looking for wedding files. The folder was gone. Not misplaced. Removed. Along with the receipts Saad had insisted on handling. That was when fear replaced confusion. I realized I was being slowly excluded from decisions, from information, from my own wedding. Whatever Saad was dealing with, he was handling it alone. And worse, he was controlling what I was allowed to know. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my hand, heart heavy with a truth I wasn't ready to say out loud. People don't suddenly walk away unless they've already practiced leaving in their mind. And Saad? He wasn't lost. He was hiding something, and every instinct in me whispered that the cake tasting was only the beginning. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that looks ordinary but carries the weight of ruin. Saad's laptop was left open on the dining table. I had gone to grab a notebook, but curiosity, or maybe fate, pulled me toward it. One glance at the screen was enough to stop my heart. An email draft titled "Transfer of Wedding Funds and Assets, Urgent" stared back at me. My hands trembled as I clicked. There it was, a detailed plan to siphon not only the joint wedding savings we had painstakingly gathered but also the inheritance my parents had given me. Every bank transfer accounted for, every signature falsified, every document rewritten to erase my claim. And worse, the recipients were named: Saad's sister, his mother, even a shell company that had been quietly set up months ago. I felt my chest tighten. Then, a thread of messages popped up, between Saad, his parents, and someone named Nadia, a family friend I barely knew. Their conversation was clinical, almost gleeful, discussing my emotional fragility and how convenient it would be if I were kept in the dark until the transfers were finalized. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was personal. Methodical. Heartless. I sank to the floor, clutching my phone. Every text we had shared, every promise he made during those late-night conversations about forever now felt like a cruel performance. The man who whispered love into my ears had been plotting my erasure the entire time. I tried to speak. My throat burned. Why would you do this? The answer was already on the screen. No words from him. Just the evidence. Anger bubbled in me, wild and raw. Tears mingled with disbelief. How could someone who once told me, "You complete me," turn into a conspirator plotting my loss? But beneath the shock, a cold clarity settled in. They thought I was naive, a quiet partner who would accept their plan without question. They underestimated me, my memory, my patience, my resolve. I spent the night combing through every file, every email, every bank record. Each discovery fueled a strange mix of rage and focus. The heartbreak still throbbed, but it transformed into something sharper, colder. By morning, I knew, this was no longer about reconciliation. It was about reclaiming what was mine, and making them pay for every deceitful smile and every manipulative word. Saad had walked out during a cake tasting, thinking he was clever. But I realized something dangerous. Cleverness is fragile when the person you betrayed decides to fight back. And fight back I would. The question wasn't if I would, it was how. Because the person who called me fiancé had become a stranger. And strangers, when they cross the line, don't get second chances. I spent that night staring at the ceiling. The glow of Saad's laptop still burned into my mind. Every lie, every scheme, every false smile, it played on repeat. My heart ached, my hands shook, and yet somewhere deep inside, a spark flickered. The trigger came unexpectedly the next morning. I was in the kitchen, sipping tea, when my mother called. Her voice was soft, hesitant. "Hina, are you okay? Did Saad tell you anything?" I froze. And then it hit me. The realization was sudden, brutal, and oddly liberating. I wasn't powerless. I had documents, records, proof. I had my parents' letters, my bank statements, even recordings of suspicious calls he thought I didn't notice. For months, I had been keeping quiet, pretending everything was fine, letting him manipulate the narrative. But now, I saw clearly, I had all I needed to reclaim control. The tears that came next weren't of sorrow, they were of release. Every whispered doubt, every sleepless night, every second spent wondering if I had imagined it all, was replaced by one sharp, undeniable truth: I could fight. It started with organizing the evidence. Bank statements, emails, receipts, and text messages, everything was compiled meticulously. Each proof point told the story he had hoped to hide. And the more I sorted through them, the heavier the knot of anger and betrayal in my chest transformed into something precise: strategy. I remembered the cake tasting, the empty chair, the casual text abandoning me mid-step. That image, which had haunted me, now fueled me. If he thought I was fragile enough to crumble quietly, he was about to learn that the quietest people often pack the sharpest edge. By evening, I had a plan forming in my mind, and with it came clarity. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. This was about justice. About reclaiming my life from someone who treated love as currency, who treated trust as disposable. I sat down at my laptop and drafted an email to a trusted lawyer, someone outside of our families, someone who wouldn't be swayed by Saad's charm or his mother's persuasion. Every sentence I typed, I felt my courage grow. I realized something crucial: the pain of betrayal can break you, yes, but it can also teach you who you truly are. By the time night fell, I wasn't the same girl who had waited in a bakery, confused and abandoned. I was a woman who had been tested, who had been called a victim, and decided instead to become unstoppable. Saad thought he had walked out of a cake tasting without consequences. He didn't know that by abandoning me, he had lit the fuse. And I was ready to explode. I moved carefully, like someone walking through a house filled with sleeping snakes. The first step was silence. I didn't confront Saad. I didn't accuse him. I didn't tell my friends what I'd found. I replied to his occasional texts with short, calm messages. "Take your time. I understand." I let him believe his disappearance had broken me into compliance. That illusion was my shield. Step 2 was evidence, and I was relentless. I copied every file from his laptop onto a secure drive: emails with banks, drafts of transfer requests, messages where his parents discussed moving funds before emotions complicate things. I printed bank statements showing how my inheritance had been slowly rerouted under vague labels like temporary holding and family adjustment. I cross-checked everything. Dates. Amounts. Signatures. The picture was undeniable. This wasn't panic. It was premeditation. Step 3 was witnesses. I contacted the decorator, the venue manager, even the bakery consultant from the cake tasting. I asked simple questions, nothing accusatory. Each answer added another thread. Payments Saad claimed to have made? Never received. Vendors he said were settled? Still waiting. He hadn't just stolen from me. He'd lied to everyone. Step 4 was the trap. Saad finally called a week later. His voice was softer now, almost reassuring. "I'm sorting things out," he said. "We don't need to involve lawyers or families yet. Let's keep this clean." Clean. I swallowed my anger and replied gently, "I don't want drama. I just want closure." That was all he needed to hear. 2 days later, he sent me an email summarizing his version of events, how the funds were handled, how decisions were made for our future, how I had agreed verbally to let him manage finances. That email became the cornerstone of my case. Step 5 was professional distance. I met with the lawyer again. We didn't rush. She explained timelines, legal pressure points, and the power of letting someone incriminate themselves fully before striking. "Right now," she said, "he thinks he's winning." And she was right. Saad began acting like a man already free. Posting photos. Attending family dinners. Letting rumors spread that I was unstable. That I had scared him away. I let it happen. Because tension isn't built by speed. It's built by patience. By the time everything was compiled, documents, statements, emails, witness confirmations, I had a folder thick enough to end his narrative permanently. All that remained was choosing the moment. The public moment. The one where Saad would realize that walking out of a cake tasting wasn't an escape, it was a confession he didn't know he'd made. He still thought he held the power. He had no idea I was counting down. Because the closer someone gets to believing they're untouchable, the harder the fall feels when the truth finally grabs them. The reckoning didn't happen in a courtroom first. It happened at the place Saad never expected me to show up again, the wedding venue. His parents had called a family meeting there, under the excuse of settling pending vendor issues and refunds. Saad was confident. Smiling. Relaxed. He believed the story had already been written. I was emotional, embarrassed, and quietly fading from the picture. When I walked in, the room shifted. He froze for half a second, just long enough. "I'm glad everyone's here," I said, calm, steady. "This will save time." The venue manager cleared his throat. "We were waiting on payment confirmations." "Perfect," my lawyer said, stepping forward beside me. "Because we have those." Saad's smile faltered. One by one, the truth unfolded like a controlled explosion. Bank statements appeared on the table, projected onto the screen. Transfers from our joint wedding account. Then from my inheritance account. Then the shell company. Dates circled. Amounts highlighted. The room went silent. His sister spoke first. "That money was for family safekeeping." My lawyer didn't blink. "Then why was it moved 3 days after the cake tasting appointment she was abandoned at?" Saad turned toward me, eyes wide. "Hina, this isn't what you think." I pressed play. His voice filled the room from a recording he never knew existed. "Once I walk out, she'll panic. By the time she realizes, the funds will be gone." His mother gasped. His father stood up, shouting about privacy, legality, misunderstandings. Then the vendors spoke. The decorator confirmed unpaid invoices. The bakery consultant confirmed no refunds were processed, despite Saad claiming they were. The venue manager admitted he'd been misled by falsified emails. Every lie collapsed under its own weight. Saad's phone buzzed repeatedly. He glanced down once and went pale. His bank accounts frozen. The transfers flagged. The shell company under investigation. This wasn't drama anymore. This was consequence. I finally spoke again, my voice steady but sharp. "You didn't just walk out of a cake tasting," I said. "You walked out because you thought disappearing would make theft easier." I turned to his parents. "You raised him to believe love was leverage. no one defended him now. The meeting ended abruptly, with lawyers exchanging cards, vendors demanding payment, and Saad standing alone in the center of the room he once thought would host his wedding. As I walked out, the venue manager whispered, "I'm sorry this happened to you." I nodded. "It didn't happen to me," I said. "It was done by him." And for the first time since that empty chair at the bakery, I felt it, not heartbreak. Justice. Because the man who thought he could vanish mid-commitment learned something too late. When you run from accountability, you don't escape it. You only choose the place where it catches you. The dust settled slowly, but the impact was permanent. Saad's confidence evaporated overnight. His parents, once so proud and controlling, now avoided calls from relatives, friends, and vendors who had once admired their family's perfect image. His sister tried to salvage appearances, but everyone who mattered now knew the truth. The carefully constructed web of deceit had collapsed in an instant. I, meanwhile, reclaimed everything: my inheritance, my wedding funds, my dignity. The legal process ensured that every penny redirected without my consent was returned. And more importantly, I walked away with my self-respect intact, a quiet but undeniable victory over the people who once called me naive. Friends and family reached out, astonished at the level of planning and courage it had taken. Many whispered that I should have been crushed, but I had chosen not to be a victim. I had chosen to be deliberate, patient, and unstoppable. Even my own reflection surprised me. The woman staring back wasn't fragile. She wasn't the girl left alone at a cake tasting, wondering why the person she trusted had vanished. She was stronger, wiser, and unafraid to fight for what was hers. Every step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that had been under siege for months. I never sought revenge for revenge's sake. The purpose was clear: justice, exposure, and reclaiming my life. And in that, there was satisfaction deeper than any fleeting victory could offer. Saad disappeared from my life completely. He wasn't just rejected, he was exposed. And everyone who had supported or enabled him learned that betrayal carries consequences far heavier than the betrayal itself. To anyone watching this, have you ever trusted someone completely, only to have them vanish in the middle of your plans or manipulate your life behind your back? Have you felt like a pawn in someone else's scheme, powerless and unseen? If you have, remember this: even when betrayal feels like the end, it can be the spark that ignites your strength. Speak up, prepare wisely, and reclaim what's yours. Because here's the truth I learned: people who treat love as convenience, and trust as a tool to be exploited. They never anticipate the weight of consequences when their victim decides to stand. They never realize that the person they called abandoned can turn their own deception into their undoing. And sometimes, the most poetic justice isn't shouting at them, it's walking away, untouched, with the life and dignity they tried to steal, leaving them to carry the burden of their own lies forever. If this story resonated with you, comment below with your own experiences and lessons learned. And subscribe, because the world needs to see that strength often rises from betrayal, and justice can be sweeter than revenge itself.